what I got told, that I said in one of the previous videos that I've got on this particular playlist, was that they go to OT, and the OT are put between a rock and a hard place, which is not fair on them, and it's definitely not fair on the person, i.e. in this case, my son, as he's the person with the disabilities and the vulnerabilities and needs. So she was asked, will this property suit his needs? And she knew that it wasn't going to suit his needs with regards to certain aspects of how she knows he is as a young man with the disabilities and vulnerabilities, autism and sensory needs that he has. But unfortunately, she was put between a rock and a hard place, which is, it's this or this young man's going to be homeless. So what was she supposed to do? Say, no, the property won't suit his needs. Then the eviction happened at the secondary private let we were in, and because my son was obviously still there when we were in the homelessness unit, and then he ended up with absolutely nothing. So she was put in a bit of a catch-22 situation where she had to say, well, we can kind of try and make it work, but there will have to be certain things done to it. And over time, it's been very, very apparent that our initial first thoughts were indeed absolutely correct, but it's just like the council, the social worker have already said to the council, this was never supposed to be a forever home. This was supposed to be to prevent homelessness. This situation was, this house was to prevent this young man being left without accommodation. It was never supposed to be a forever home. So at the end of the day, we need to absolutely ensure that moving forwards, these concerns are fully aired, even although they were aired to begin with. So what that's meant is that we are now having to put in ridiculous amounts of paperwork to the housing department to show where the problems are an issue and why the house doesn't suit his needs. And they knew that already, but like I say, professional people, therapists, occupational therapists particularly, are being put in really, really difficult spots because they're getting told, well, there isn't another house, so you really are going to have to make this work for him because there isn't anything else. So then what is a occupational therapist supposed to do? Say, well, no, that house isn't going to be suitable, and then the council go, oh well, there's nothing else then, so we're just going to have to go back to the drawing board, which would have been fine if my son didn't have an eviction over the top of his head. You know what I mean? So whatever we're supposed to do, the point of the matter is there's professional people being put in really dangerous situations, really, in some respects, because they're having to agree to properties that they know does not suit a person's full needs, because in situations like this where time is of the essence, they also can't leave somebody without a property and in a dangerous situation, i.e. homelessness, looming above their heads. Because my son could not go through the homelessness sector, hence why we did it instead, so that he could stay in the private let until the council provided him with suitable accommodation. Now, had the private landlord been able to allow my son to stay there until the council came up with a better and more suitable property, he could have stayed there until such time as the council could find him a better property. In other words, the occupational therapist would not have been put in a predicament where she was having to state, yes, this property can work, with some, adaptations being done to it, she knew very well that it wasn't going to suit his needs. But what was she supposed to do in that circumstance? So it's absolutely ridiculous and quite abhorrent that councils and governments and local authorities are putting professional people in situations where they have to make judgment calls like that. It's not fair on them. It's not fair on the people with the disabilities that need the properties, and it's not fair on their loved ones, families, carers, and other people in that team, where they are being forced the hand to comply almost with what they're being told by the council, which is, this is all that is, and like, tough crap, you have to accept it whether you like it or not. So had the private landlord said, okay, your son can stay put until such time as the council are able to sort this out somehow and get your son a property that is going to suit his needs properly, then we would have had a bit of time to play with. But unfortunately, it was getting to the point where it was getting ridiculous, where that was becoming very apparent that they weren't wanting to do that. Now, there's a couple of things where it wasn't completely that landlord's fault, in the respect of, in between all of this, somewhere along the lines, the original letting agency switched out. So whether it was the landlord that had changed the company that she had the property through, or whether the company changed names, I think it was a completely different company. I'm not quite sure. But all I know is some of the stuff that had been put over to the original letting agency, the new letting agency, or part of new agency, or whatever the case was, didn't know certain things, and that didn't come out till I would say probably maybe approximately April of 2023. So somebody, a neighbour close to my son there, kept putting in repeat complaints about him, despite at the time, area lead manager of the support agency, speaking with them directly and basically stating, this is what's going on, I know it's not ideal, but you're going to have to grin and bear it until we can get this sorted out. In the respect of, they kept complaining like on a every other day basis, basically. So like I say, my son was freaking out. He wanted to go back to his original home. Like I say, the place was stayed in for over a decade. He wanted to go back there, and he didn't understand why simply that was not the case. How you could be living in a house that length of time, then suddenly you could no longer live there anymore. That's a lot for him to process and get his head round. I just couldn't comprehend that at all. So basically what that meant was that subsequently some information about my son's needs were not passed over to the new department, meaning that, wait and you hear this, I get an email saying, could I please get in touch with this woman, because the people beside my son were going to put an ASBO against my son. And I thought, what the actual hell? So I then said, could I phone her? So I phoned her, and I started to run down some of the things that was going on. She stopped me in the conversation. She says, wait a minute, so you're telling me your son's got these particular needs? I'm so sorry, I did not know that. When speaking to the people that made the complaint, they forgot to tell the lady that he had very profound needs. She said the information I was almost getting was like, he was banging and slamming doors, he was running up and down the stairs, he was screaming and all sorts, and she was confused as to how that would fit in, I guess, into an atypical scenario, which when I started saying those things, she said, oh yeah, that is making a lot more sense. I couldn't understand why somebody would do that, but because of your son's needs, it's making a lot of sense. And I was kind of breaking down how he kind of was reactive and how he was and how his sensory needs were and all the rest of it. And she said, oh my gosh, that makes complete sense. So needless to say, when she started to find out these pieces of information, she was like, oh my God, like, I'm so sorry, I didn't realise that. She said the persons that were making the complaint against your son didn't tell me that. Sorry, I'm multitasking here. They didn't tell me that. So I was like, well, that's a bit dodgy. So anyway, when she found that information out, she says, I'm going to go back to them and I'm going to say, I found out some information that you didn't tell me that somewhat changed things a little. She told me that no other action would be taken with regards to that, what they'd put forward. So I explained to them about how my son was, and immediately she was like, don't worry about that. So the swap over between the original letting agency to the new letting agency, or a different department had taken over from another department, whatever the case may be, I'm not quite sure. But to cut a long story short, when they found this information out, they were quite taken aback. And it got to the point where I was really considering taking legal action against these people. But I wasn't well enough. I was recovering from major surgeries and there was a lot going on. And I just didn't have the physical or mental energy to go through all that at the time. And with things like that, you have to have complaints in regards to cases like that within 6 months. And I was just not keeping too well at this point, so I didn't have the physical or mental strength to do that. So I decided to just let sleeping dogs lie, and that hopefully the universe would intervene with regards to that side of it, I guess. So basically, I just wanted to concentrate on my son's situation and getting him sorted out. So because of all that, and because of everything that happened, I guess, pertaining to and around that, the landlord wanted my son out of there as soon as possible. And there was a big hoo-ha about trying to get into the house and check the house was okay and everything like that. And I said, you can't do that while my son's living there because he has severe autism and he's going through a lot right now. And you wandering through the house and trying to do this, that and the next thing, setting off smoke detectors and God knows what else, will completely freak him out. So they tried to put in for that 2 or 3 times and that I got that stopped. I said, you can wait until he's out of there. Which we won that side, and they had to wait until my son was out of there. Anyway, after my son got shifted to where he is now, we let the letting agency come round the property the next available day they had, and they were like, the house is in perfect condition. It's really been looked after. The work that had been put into the property prior to, so decorating, soundproofing, certain aspects of the house, he was very happy with. So needless to say, the hoo-ha they had created to get in there and check everything was kind of a little bit over the top. And when they got in there and checked the place, they saw that there was absolutely no reason for them to be going on the way they had been going on about trying to get into the property to check it. But anyway, it just showed that the house had been taken care of and that the personal support workers that were in place to help my son when we were in the temporary accommodations really were doing a good job. Like, they between them all, they managed to help and support my son and keep on top of the house, which is quite difficult to do with regards to juggling 20 things, you know. Like at the time, you've got to remember too, my son was not coping too well. He was having meltdowns. He was not a happy bunny sometimes. And therefore, that was a bit of a juggling act. But they managed, hats off to them. Uh, so when all that had taken place and happened, it showed that, they had jumped the gun and had probably panicked because of all the complaints they'd got, and then realised that what we'd been telling them all along, they had no reason to worry. So when they came into the house and looked around the place, I took video evidence and photographic evidence to back that up, and like the house was in really, really good condition. But needless to say, what happened was because of all that and them trying to sort of expedite the situation forward to get my son out of there, alternatively and unfortunately left us in a position where they were constantly getting hassled all the time to get my son out of there and into his place. They kept asking, when is he going to be moving into his place? If he's got a place, why isn't he in it yet? And we were trying to explain, like, the place is not in good state of repair. I actually thought, to be honest with you, when they originally told us it's moving condition, don't worry about it, we thought, oh God, well, after the last time, surely they are going to have learnt their lesson and make sure that the property's in really good condition, so that none of that delay happens and my son can get moved in a timely manner once it's been okayed, and then everybody's happy.